Number 11. Jason Chen. When 22-year-old Jasmine "Jazzy" Pace failed to show up for her family's Thanksgiving dinner in 2022, they immediately feared something was wrong. In a missing persons report, they identified the apartment of Jasmine's boyfriend, 22-year-old Jason Chen, as her last known location. Jasmine's mother, Katrina Pace, went to Chen's apartment and found her daughter's ID and credit cards, which she handed over to detectives as evidence. Inside the apartment, investigators found broken glass, recently purchased cleaning supplies, and a large amount of blood that had been cleaned up. A DNA test confirmed that the blood belonged to Jasmine. Within days of her disappearance, Jasmine's car was found abandoned along a roadside. Despite having no body, police arrested Chen on suspicion of first-degree murder. A few days after Jasmine's car was located, her body was found handcuffed and stuffed in a suitcase alongside another road. She had been stabbed 60 times. Chen remains in custody on a $5 million bond and faces an additional charge of abusing a corpse. Number 10. Tobias Moran. 25-year-old German kindergarten teacher Simone Strobel disappeared in 2005 while backpacking in Australia with her boyfriend, Tobias Suckfuel. She was last seen drinking with Suckfuel, his sister, and another German tourist at a caravan park in northern New South Wales. Shortly before Strobel disappeared, she and Suckfuel got into a heated argument. Less than a week later, her body was found covered in palm fronds just a few hundred feet from her last known whereabouts. Strobel's remains showed some bruising, but the medical examiner was unable to determine her cause of death. Suckfuel denied any involvement in Strobel's murder, and while he remained on law enforcement's radar as a person of interest, there wasn't enough evidence to detain him. He flew back to Germany, moved on with his life, and refused to return to Australia for an inquest into Strobel's death. But he eagerly returned to the country in 2012 after changing his last name to Moran and marrying a wealthy Australian woman from Perth, where the couple bought a multi-million-dollar luxury home and started a family. Meanwhile, investigators remained intent on solving the case, at one point offering a $1 million reward for information leading to the perpetrator. In July of 2022, authorities charged Moran with Strobel's murder. It's unclear whether they got a break in the case or what might have prompted the decision to arrest him, and his lawyer has accused law enforcement of charging Moran without sufficient evidence. Even the judge described the prosecution's case as weak. Moran's wife and her wealthy parents posted $500,000 bail, allowing the 42-year-old to await trial at home. The entire family had to turn over their passports, and he's banned from going near international airports, must hand over his phone for searches immediately upon request, and is required to check in with the police 3 days a week. Number 9. Jason Barker. Just days before Christmas in 2021, 55-year-old Angela Kukawski was reported missing in Sherman Oaks, California. The mother of 5 and celebrity business manager, whose list of past clients included the Kardashian family, Kanye West, Nicki Minaj, and Tupac Shakur's estate, was found murdered in the trunk of her car in Simi Valley the next day. A medical examiner later ruled that she died from strangulation and blunt force injuries to the head and neck. Shortly after they found Kukawski's car, LAPD detectives located her boyfriend, 49-year-old Jason Barker, at a relative's house nearby. A few days later, they took him into custody on charges of torture and premeditated murder. Barker pleaded not guilty and is awaiting trial from behind bars on a $3 million bond. For now, the details of the alleged crime are being kept under tight wraps. Authorities have not revealed an alleged motive in the horrific murder. Number 8. Ocasta Ferguson. In January 2023, 33-year-old Kayla Kelly's aunt and co-workers reported her missing in Collin County, Texas. While questioning her friends and family, investigators learned that Kelly had recently discovered that her boyfriend was married and had been using a fake name to prevent her from finding out. They said that she planned to blackmail the man, who she knew as Kevin, but nobody knew the details of the plan. The next day, Kelly's burned-out car was found along a roadside in Frisco outside Dallas. Unfortunately, it offered no clues to her whereabouts. Detectives gained entry into her apartment and found her dog without food or water, something that Kelly's family members said she would never let happen. Through phone records, police identified Kelly's boyfriend as 32-year-old Ocasta Ferguson. They located his car, which had recently been reported stolen, near Kelly's home with gloves and duct tape inside. Ferguson allegedly claimed that he last saw Kelly when she dropped him off at work on the day she disappeared, and that they were supposed to have lunch together, but she never showed up. He admitted to using a fake name because he didn't want her to find out he was married, and to parking his car outside her home because he was hiding it from his wife, who reported it stolen. According to court documents obtained by NBC5, Ferguson admitted to driving Kelly's car when detectives tracked his phone to the location where the vehicle was found, after previously denying any knowledge of the car's whereabouts. He claimed that Kelly was in the back seat while he drove, but said he was unaware of her location or condition. Authorities took him into custody on a kidnapping charge. About a week after Kelly disappeared, her remains were found buried in a field near Ferguson's house. He now faces additional charges of murder and arson. Number 7. Aaron Ray. During a date night in Newcastle, England in 2022, 21-year-old Aaron Ray discovered that his boyfriend, Jason Brockbank, was messaging other men on the Grindr dating app. 3 days later, Brockbank was found stabbed to death in his dorm room at Northumbria University during a welfare check. Police quickly connected the murder to Ray, who claimed he acted in self-defense. He told investigators that Brockbank attacked him in a fit of rage after being confronted about his alleged infidelity. Ray admitted to slashing his boyfriend, but insisted he was unaware of the extent of the injuries when he left the scene. By then, Ray already had a troubling history of violence, which included an animal cruelty conviction for killing his family's cockatiel 2 years earlier. During questioning, he reportedly said that he hadn't committed a crime because it's just a bird. He was banned from owning pets for 15 years. Prosecutors argued that if Ray had called for help for Brockbank in a timely fashion, the victim could have possibly been saved. Instead, he chose to say nothing while Brockbank slowly bled out. They also noted how Brockbank was found under his comforter, indicating that he was in bed and asleep, and that he posed no active threat to Ray. A jury convicted Ray of murder after deliberating for just an hour. The judge admonished him for showing no remorse throughout the case and sentenced him to life in prison with a minimum of 22 years. Number 6. Ronald Roldan. 21-year-old Bethany Decker was 5 months pregnant with her second child when she went missing in Loudoun County, Virginia in January 2011. Years went by with no trace of her, despite extensive searches, and the case went cold. And while police always suspected her boyfriend and the father of her unborn baby, Ronald Roldan, of being involved in Bethany's disappearance, they lacked enough evidence to prove it in court. Bethany's family and friends described Roldan as abusive, with a history of threatening the young woman and her family. The day before she vanished, she visited her grandmother, who testified in court that Roldan kept text messaging Bethany. She tried convincing her granddaughter to stay at her house, but she left. While detectives continued to work leads, Roldan moved to North Carolina, where he was convicted of felony assault with intent to kill his new girlfriend in 2016. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison and slated for deportation to his native Bolivia upon the completion of his time. To stop Roldan from leaving the country and evading justice in Bethany's case, Loudoun County detectives obtained a warrant to charge him with abduction. About a month after he was extradited to Virginia in 2020, a grand jury indicted him on a second-degree murder charge. Without a body, prosecutors knew they would be taking a big risk by going to trial, so they were open to making a plea deal with Roldan. He agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for a 40-year sentence with 27.5 years suspended, meaning he would spend 12.5 years in prison. The deal also required him to explain in detail what happened to Bethany. According to Roldan's version of events, the couple argued because he didn't want Bethany to go to her scheduled work shift. As she walked away, Roldan shoved her and she fell forward, striking her head against a windowsill on her way down. He checked for a pulse and realized Bethany was dead. Roldan claimed he was worried that authorities wouldn't believe him, so he disposed of Bethany's body in a trash compactor at their apartment complex. To delay an investigation into her disappearance, Roldan impersonated the young woman in emails and Facebook messages. After serving his time, he'll serve 5 years of probation and will be subject to deportation. Number 5. David Penna. 10 days after she last heard from her daughter, Felicia, in October 2007, Sharon Magaya filed a missing persons report in Dorchester, Massachusetts. She reported that the 32-year-old was last seen at the address of her live-in boyfriend, David Penna. Several months later, in early 2008, Penna told police that Felicia stabbed him with a pair of scissors during an argument. He fled and went to his mother's, and when he returned to the apartment a few days later, all of Felicia's belongings were gone. Penna said he assumed that she had gone to Florida to be with an ex-boyfriend. According to documents obtained by Mass Live, a witness reported that Penna came to their house on the night he and Felicia argued. He had a stab wound from the scissors, but his shirt was covered in what seemed like too much blood for the size of his injury. After cleaning the wound, the witness drove Penna to his mother's house. That same witness and a second witness told police that they saw Penna and another man carrying a rolled-up carpet out of the apartment he shared with Felicia. The men stuffed the item into a car and drove off at a high rate of speed. Penna returned yet again with a crazed expression on his face, according to the first witness, who said that he repeatedly asked them to talk. Concerned about his behavior, they refused to let him in their apartment. Despite all signs pointing toward Penna's involvement in Felicia's disappearance based on witness accounts, authorities lacked sufficient evidence to charge him in connection with the case. Years passed, and in 2017, the man who helped Penna move the rolled-up carpet came forward. He said he realized at some point that Felicia's body was wrapped in the carpet, but drove to a wooded area at Penna's request because he was scared. The witness helped carry the body into the forest and then waited in their car for Penna to return. 5 years later, in 2022, police re-interviewed Felicia's family and an ex-boyfriend, who all said that they were confident she was dead because she would have contacted them if she wasn't. After finding no signs of her being alive, authorities decided to move forward with the case and obtained a warrant against Penna for murder. He was picked up in Florida and is being held without bail as the 15-year-old case plays out. Felicia's remains have not yet been found. Number 4. Michael Hosin. In early 2023, the NYPD received a call from a man living out of state who asked him to go check on his sister, 28-year-old Kelly Quack, who lived in Brooklyn and was studying to become a nurse. Officers banged on the front door and waited an unusually long time before an extremely lethargic man, who was later identified as Kelly's boyfriend, 32-year-old Michael Hosin, came to the door. He reportedly said he had taken a lot of pills. Inside the apartment, they found Kelly dead in a pool of blood on her living room floor from what appeared to be multiple blunt force injuries. Someone had brutally beaten her to death, leaving her face shattered. Based on the condition of her remains, officers speculated that Kelly had been dead for at least a day. Kelly's mother, Shin Young, told the New York Daily News that her daughter's relationship with Hosin was on and off. She said that the circumstances surrounding Kelly's death are a mystery. Hosin was taken to the hospital for a mental evaluation and has since been charged with murder. For now, authorities are remaining tight-lipped about the details of the alleged crime. Number 3. Dion Caseta. When 37-year-old Kimberly Mimovic went missing in 2001, her live-in boyfriend Dion Caseta claimed that she never returned from an early morning walk to watch the sunrise along the Atlantic coast in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Caseta said that he and Mimovic had decided to make an impromptu trip to visit his sister and drove all night from their mobile home in East Lake, Wales. Naturally, authorities suspected that something bad had happened to Kimberly and that Caseta had something to do with it. He insisted otherwise, but according to investigators, his stories kept changing and didn't seem to add up. Neighbors claimed they heard loud noises coming from the couple's trailer on the night in question, and that things went silent after one big final thud. A search of the home turned up items that Kimberly wouldn't have left overnight without, including an asthma inhaler, her diabetes blood testing kit, and her favorite watch. A bedspread was missing from the bed, and Kimberly's dog had been left without food or water, which she would never let happen. On the way to Deerfield Beach, Cassetta made 2 pit stops and was seen alone. He claimed Kimberly waited in the car. 2 of his ex-wives told detectives that he was a controlling partner and that his possessive behavior worsened when he drank, which falls in line with prosecutors' theory that he killed Kimberly in a fit of rage after a man approached her at a bar earlier that night. Cassetta was finally charged with Kimberly's murder in 2010. He was convicted of manslaughter and received a 15-year sentence, but appealed the decision and won a new trial in 2016. While it's unclear how the second trial panned out, prison records show that he was released that year and returned to prison the following year. He was released again in 2019. Number 2. Keshawn Sheffield. In August of 2019, a landscaper at the Aubrey Arboretum in Philadelphia went to fill in a hole he had noticed a few days earlier and found that it had been filled in. Suspecting that something wasn't right, he called the police, who dug and found the skeletal remains of a man who had been stabbed to death. Near the grave, there was a borough-issued recycling bin from nearby Pottstown. Police were unable to identify the victim and the case went cold. Around the same time, Kimberly Cyrus began receiving unusual text messages from her son, 22-year-old Rasheed Young, who lived in Pottstown. In the messages, he wrote that he wanted nothing to do with the family, and the family eventually stopped hearing from him altogether. 4 months after the strange behavior began, Cyrus filed a missing persons report. She learned that there was a warrant out for Rasheed's arrest for criminal mischief after his apartment was found flooded by a clogged sink. He had initially promised to pay his landlord $20,000 for the damages, but had stopped responding to her messages and was no longer living at the apartment. Rasheed's loved ones languished without answers for 3 years. A renewed interest in the case finally came in 2022 after Rasheed's lawyer, Nadeem Bazar, learned that his client hadn't withdrawn any money from his $2 million trust fund since his family reported him missing and froze the account. A serial number on the recycling bin found near the unidentified grave in Philly had already been traced to Rasheed's address, yet there appeared to be little follow-up by the police. Bazar hired a private investigator who traced the location of some of the young man's last text messages to an address in Philadelphia belonging to the mother of Keshawn Sheffield, Rasheed's boyfriend, at the time of his disappearance. As it turned out, Rasheed's vehicle was still being driven and was seen parked near the address. Shortly after the disappearance, Sheffield had told police that he and Rasheed had gotten into an argument and they were no longer in contact. Around the same time Rasheed's vehicle was located, a witness admitted that Sheffield had confessed to stabbing Rasheed and that they had helped Sheffield bury the body at the Arboretum, where the unidentified skeleton was found. The witness said that when they asked Sheffield why he killed Rasheed, he simply said he had to. His motive for the alleged crime remains unclear. The investigator went to authorities with his findings, and they finally made the connection between the 2 cases. DNA testing confirmed that the remains belonged to Rasheed, and authorities slapped Sheffield with 1st and 3rd degree murder charges. He's being held without bail, pending the outcome of the case. Number 1. Haoyu Wang. In January of 2022, a 19-year-old University of Utah student named Zhifan Dong called the police and reported that her boyfriend, 26-year-old fellow student Haoyu Wang, had attacked her. Wang reportedly admitted to hitting the young woman on the head during an argument and was charged with domestic violence-related assault. The very next day, Dong called the police again to report Wang for threatening to harm himself. Less than a month after the first 2 incidents, university staff members received troubling emails from Wang threatening harm to both himself and Dong. They called the police, who traced Dong's cell phone to a motel in Salt Lake City. Both she and Wang were in the motel room when officers arrived, except Dong was dead and Wang wasn't. He told the police that the couple had agreed to take a large amount of drugs together and allegedly admitted to purposely overdosing his girlfriend. Authorities charged him with murder, and the case appears to be ongoing. Zhifan Dong was the second University of Utah student to be killed in 4 years after reporting their partner's threats to campus police. In a statement to NBC News, her family said that they felt betrayed by the university, who they trusted to keep their daughter safe during her studies as an international student from China. The murder has sparked ongoing campaigns for change in how the university's police department responds to dating-related and domestic complaints. Thanks for watching. Which of the following scenarios would you have a harder time getting over? Your partner cheating or stealing a large amount of money from you? Let us know in the comments below and remember to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.